I've had the pleasure of working with this company to really help bring 17x back to life in this post-COVID world. The Chartered Accountants of Australia have offered up all sorts of support, encouragement, connections, and real collaboration opportunities for me as a social enterprise operator. They've backed me the way that Tom was just talking about to help open doors and bring this stuff back to life. And I know we've got some of the team in here tonight, so I expect a pretty loud roar for our very next speaker. He's Karen McWilliams, a business reform leader and sustainability expert from the Chartered Accountants of Australia.
Okay, so I'm really nervous. I'm between you and your drink and the toilet break, and I've had to follow Tom. So be kind to me. This is not my natural kind of space. But I am very passionate about sustainability, and I guess I'm very passionate about the role of accountants in how they can contribute to sustainability. I've been with Chartered Accountants Australia, New Zealand, and probably the precursor to that for 14 years now, and I've been, I guess, engaged in the sustainability space for a lot of that time. I remember when the global goals came out and writing an article which talked about them being the to-do list for the planet. Because really, I mean, I guess when I look at it, I'm like 17 goals. Now, anyone who's done anything with marketing, I think would go 17. It's not exactly the number that anybody would pick if you're picking the top certain things to do. So the way I look at it is, well, that means that every single one of those 17 was chosen really, really carefully to make sure that they needed to be there. Because I'm sure there were so many people saying, can we just make it 20? What about 15? 17, and even when you see them putting the logo, they have to kind of put one at the end to kind of make it fit on a 6x3 square. It just doesn't really work. But they all matter. And when, I guess the conversations around the goals as well that's really important is that it's not just about, I guess, looking at what we can do, that we can say, that we can stick a badge on. We've actually got to do something more. We've got to do something beyond what we're doing already. Now, we're 7 years into the 15-year thing, and we're clearly not doing enough already. But we're not, everyone's sort of looking at it and saying, well, what can we do that says that we're aligning to the goals? But actually, it's that step change, and it's some of the things that you've heard earlier, Tom, particularly, talking about that courage, that leap. We've got to go beyond business as usual and just saying, look, this is what we're doing, and it aligns to the goals. And as I said, I'm very passionate about, I guess, the role accountants can play in this space and how we can empower our members. And we've got 130,000 members. So that's why I've always thought it's not about what we can do as Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand, but how can we empower those members to make the changes to the organisations that they work with and for. And I think it's important to remember our members are not just the chartered accountant in the practice down the road who's doing someone's tax returns. Yes, those are our members, but we also have members in the big four firms. So we go from practice from big to small. The ASX 100 all the way down to the small SMEs have got chartered accountants, not-for-profits, academia, the public sector. Our members are across all of those segments, and they are making changes in those organisations. And I guess what I'm kind of keen to do is how can I empower them to make those changes and actually contribute towards the goals. Chartered accountants actually have a code of ethics that we all have to abide by, and one of those aspects of that is about actually acting in the public interest. And so I very strongly believe that, I guess, contributing to the SDGs, which are really in everyone's public interest, is something really critical. I think the other thing that's really important about how we contribute to the goals is, as I said, it is going above and beyond, but it's actually looking that when we do go above and beyond, it's actually making sure we don't drop the ball on any of the other goals. When I first, I guess, engaged in this area, there always used to be this debate about, well, if we're going to take action on climate, we're not going to get economic growth. We've got to be willing to forego some of these other things. And I think the sense for me with the SDGs is that we can have it all. We might not be able to have it all as fast or as far every time, but we can, if we can keep all of those 17 balls in the air and push a few further forward each time, as an individual or an organisation, then we're making a difference. And I think that's something that's really very important. So I'm going to talk a bit about how chartered accountants can particularly contribute to 6 of the goals. And as I've indicated, why chartered accountants? Our members are in all of the sectors. They're in a very diverse, I guess, skill set. I know there are some of them here, even in the front row. They're trusted advisors. People go to their accountant for advice. They're helping businesses, and they can help them, I guess, not just manage the costs, but also with the SDGs, there are a number of opportunities out there. And so they have that ability to share those insights and help those businesses take advantage of some of the opportunities. One of the areas that I sort of first engaged with when I started doing sustainability is His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales Accounting for Sustainability project. And he brought that into existence because he felt that one of the things that was holding organisations back from advancing sustainability was because there wasn't seen to be that sort of commercial financial acumen, that people were saying, look, it cost money, it didn't contribute enough. And so therefore it was just seen as a cost. If you didn't have enough money, then, well, we can't do it. And so he was really keen to engage with the accountants to see actually how can we ensure that we are actually pricing things properly, and therefore that we can actually make those contributions. And that's been really powerful for me to think about, I guess, how we can advance that within the membership, but also ensure that, I guess, we're taking people forward and actually showing that it's about opportunities as well, and that there's a way that you can, I guess, it's not just going to cost money to do this. So the other areas that I guess are important are around the disclosures. We need integrity in the information. How are people, as I mentioned, there's a lot of rainbow washing going on now. Everyone sticks an SDG badge. It's the new thing from the greenwashing. So we need to know that we've got integrity in the disclosures, and accountants have a really strong role to play in that. And certainly we've been engaging some of the work internationally around not just the SDG impact standards, but actually assurance over those, which again shows that organisations who are saying they're contributing to the SDGs genuinely are. And it mentions their measurement and verification. Accountants are used to contributing to information. Investors in the financial markets rely on that financial information to make decisions, and they can apply those skills to the areas around, I guess, non-financial reporting, sustainability reporting, and apply the same concepts. And what we've seen coming through recently is the International Sustainability Standards Board. So along with accounting standards, we'll now have sustainability standards coming from the same place overseas. And I guess what we're seeing from that is that we will have the same kind of quality of information being reported by entities. And I think it's going to be really important for accountants to play a role in those spaces. So I apologise, my colleague who put this one together put some fancy things in it, and I get a bit confused with how many transitions there are, and I don't know how to take it out. It's a confession for me with PowerPoint. I have not worked out how to get rid of transitions. So looking at education and where the key areas are that we are contributing, we educate our members. So as I said, we've got 130,000 members. We educate the members coming in through our continuing, through our CA program. And through that, we've actually built in a sustainability elective now. And I understand we've got close to 400 registered for that first wave of the elective that's actually starting this month. But we also educate our members on an ongoing basis. So if you're a chartered accountant, you have to do ongoing education. And so we're trying to build in some of this training around sustainability, the reporting, and so forth through our training programs. It says they've got a culture of difference makers, as I mentioned. We're trying to empower our members to make the change within the organisations that they're in, and I guess give them the skills and the knowledge and the case studies and examples to help them do that. And one of the other areas that I think is important in the education space is actually the role that understanding, I guess, accounting, but also just financial literacy and actually being genuinely financial literate, but also accounting in terms of business and business acumen is so important in terms of in that education space. And we're very passionate about how we can empower others to actually have that information, because if you do have a base understanding of accounting, then you can actually start to make that difference within those social enterprises and others that Tom's been talking about. And if we look at, I guess, the professional standards and trust piece, as I mentioned, it's a code of ethics. We have to act in the public interest, and I think it's a basis for the profession, I guess, and that need to help organisations move forward. Talking about Goal 8 and decent work and economic growth probably seems an obvious fit for us. Our advocacy is around a lot of areas, particularly we think about things like the federal budget and how we can actually advocate there for a better economic environment that means that, and I guess encouraging that level of fiscal literacy in the population to realise that we can't just spend all the money has to come in from somewhere as well. And how do we make it the most effective use of public resources? I know this isn't the sort of, I guess the goal that people might naturally go to in terms of thinking about sustainable development goals. But if we haven't got economic growth and decent work, we can't support a lot of the other ones as well. So it is one of those key areas. We also work quite closely around, as it said, they're unlocking opportunities through our CA Catalyst program, which is supporting our small and medium practices in how that they can unlock opportunities around a digital future and supporting, and they touch a whole load of SMEs. And so it's really important for how we can empower them to then empower all of the organisations that they work with and actually ensure that they have an ongoing sort of sustainable future. And as it mentions there, we're active contributors to global standards. So that's underpinning, I guess, the global capital markets are the reporting standards. And as I mentioned, they're going now beyond just the financial, and we're going into that non-financial space. And we're very much engaging with that conversation because we think it's critical that you have that transparent information, that organisations are accountable, that there is integrity in that information because people need to rely on it for decision making. And if an organisation says, this is what I'm doing, you actually want to be able to believe that and put your trust in it so that you can know whether you're investing and know the differences that are being made in that space. Goal 12, around responsible consumption and production. Now, connectivity is important here. And so it's not just, as I mentioned, I guess, information being presented in the financial, but that non-financial, the social and the environmental, and how we connect the two, and how do we advance that in the reporting space. And one of the areas is coming through is integrated reporting, which is actually looking at how companies are reporting what they do as a business. What is their value proposition? If your organisation and your value proposition is just to make money, you probably aren't going to be around for that long. You actually have to have something that your customer wants. You have to have something that actually is that they're going to come back to, or that they can see an ongoing value with. And maybe it's the customer service that you offer, when you go and get your coffee in the morning, that differentiates that coffee shop from the one next door. But it's actually thinking for organisations about what is it they do, what is their value proposition, and how do they communicate that through. And so there are abilities through integrated reporting and other channels that actually enabled organisations to start to do that. Business risks and opportunities. So what we're seeing in this space is, I guess, the looking how organisations look at risk has changed. It's changed quite dramatically in the last few years. Clearly, pandemics weren't on anybody's risk register in the first place. They now are, shot up to the top of the risk register. But actually, how organisations look and manage risk has really shifted. Risks are now far broader than what they thought. We go on to the non-financial, but they're also interconnected. It's not just as simple as isolating them. So when we look at climate change, there are also human rights implications for that. We can't just close everything down that doesn't work, because what about the communities that rely on those businesses? We've actually got to think about a just transition. We've got to bring a lot of these things along. And so managing risks and their interconnectivity is going to be hugely critical. And accountants are able to, within those workplaces, help to shift some of that and help to provide some tools and techniques to enable organisations to manage those risks. And I guess strategic and operational. And one of the key areas here is the emergence of the circular economy. And how do we account and price for that as we start to sort of not have that linear product where you just make something, sell it, and then it goes into the rubbish. But how do we actually start to build that back through? And I guess the accounting for that is becoming increasingly important because at the moment, we don't account for the disposal of the product. Someone can make something and it doesn't matter what happens to it once it's left their area. So actually, there's a key role to play in some of that decision making. Thinking a bit more about climate change, which is an area where we've done quite a lot of activity, I guess, in building our members' awareness of the role that they can play in this space. One of the emergence that we're seeing through is around the disclosure of climate-related risks and opportunities and the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. So that came out of the Financial Stability Board of the G20 back in 2015, with some recommended disclosures that came out in 2017, so 5 years ago now. We've actually seen that now roll out. We've got 8 jurisdictions around the world who are mandating climate-related financial disclosures, and the International Sustainability Standards Board that I mentioned are now developing standards. Our new government in Australia has committed to bringing in mandatory climate-related disclosures, and so we're interesting to see how that pans out, whether it will build on that work of the International Sustainability Standards Board. But we are certainly seeing that coming through, and I guess when organisations start to disclose their impacts around the climate, then we start to see decision being taken. And assurance is mentioned there because the information needs to have credibility, and that's where the auditors can come in. They can provide assurance over that information. That means that investors can rely on it for their decision making. And just unpacking the climate a bit further, we do an annual survey of our members to see what their thoughts are around climate change. So this year in February, we surveyed, I think it was about 900 responded to our survey. And as it says there, 24% are certainly seeing a high severity of climate impact on their organisation. Now, this was done, as I mentioned, in February. So take that in context when you look at the 3 and 5 Australian members who considered that their governments were not taking appropriate actions on climate. And we've got 2 and 5 members within New Zealand. But nearly 80% supported us taking an active role in climate advocacy. And certainly it was close to 80% as well, wanted more resources and information and education to support them. And that's what we're looking to do to roll out. So there we go. We've also been pretty active globally. I mentioned Accounting for Sustainability. So we've been part of their accounting bodies network for 10 plus years, 14 years now. And through that, we have recently signed up to a number of commitments. So the first, actually the bottom one's actually the first one. We signed up to a call to action. So we combined with 12 other accounting bodies representing globally 2.5 million accountants. We don't get them all in a room, don't panic. But we do. I guess the key thing is there, if you can get 2.5 million accountants making changes in the organisations and actually recognising the role that they have to play in contributing to help the organisations that they work with and for contribute to climate change, then I think we can really make a difference. And I guess that's where I see that the power around accounting. But we also were conscious that we couldn't just do this and sort of sit back and say, right, members, it's all up to you. It's nothing to do with us. So last year, we also signed up and committed with the other bodies again to actually committing to reach net zero ourselves. So walking the talk and actually saying, we're going to do it and you can too within your organisations. This one I think is really core to the accounting profession. As I mentioned, our code of ethics is paramount to how we operate. But we also, I guess, have a lot of our advocacy, and we make a couple of hundred submissions every year to government and standard assessors around some of these things. And a lot of the focus is on ensuring we have that right institutional environment, that we have the right rule of law, the right legislation and such to empower everybody to actually, to get the prosperity for all. Some of the particular areas around this will be around some of the anti-money laundering actions and how we can actually prevent corruption. All of our members have a requirement, which is to report non-compliance with laws and regulations, which is part of the foundations of the Code of Ethics. And I think it's those kind of things that will contribute to Goal 16. And finally, partnerships. And I've indicated, I guess, some of the organisations that we've already worked with, but I think that the list, when I started to try and put one out, is huge in terms of the number of organisations, both globally. As I mentioned, we work with our counterparts both through the Accounting Bodies Network. We have a Global Accounting Alliance. We have a number of organisations at that level who are, groups of accounting bodies who are all trying to help our members contribute. And with the SDGs, they're global. So we can all make, we can leverage and I guess share insights with each other to enable to support us, our members, more effectively. So we're not duplicating, because it doesn't make sense for us all to go out and do our own thing in our own countries when we can actually share. We're working with a number of partnerships, including obviously 17x as a prime example here. But we're also, I'm on the board of the UN Global Compact Network Australia, and we're a member of them. And we also, I guess, explore a number of other things. I won't go into all of them. But as it mentions there, we're looking at it from both domestically within Australia and New Zealand, but also on a global scale. And a couple of key things to call out were earlier this year, I guess we're looking at what's next. There's been a huge focus on climate, but nature is becoming increasingly critical. We now have a task force for nature-related financial disclosures, which means that's going to come through fairly quickly. And how do we, encourage our members to actually look into this space as well? And so we publicly came out alongside a Business for Nature to make sort of commitment around and a statement around the role that the profession can play, and trying to increase awareness of those challenges with our membership. And one of the things that's always struck me, if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to look at the Netflix WWF film around Our Planet, Our Business. But there was a very poignant comment in that, which was that there are no jobs on a dead planet. And so this premise that, as I said, that we can't have economic activity and save the environment at the sort of same time is kind of defies the object. And some of those points in that film were really quite compelling around that. The other space I would just mention in conclusion is the work we've been doing to engage with other professional bodies. Accountants are not going to save the world on their own, quite clearly, but actually how can we engage with a number of other professions? And so we've been working with Engineers Australia, the National Environmental Law Association, the Australian Council of Professions, and a number of bodies in New Zealand as well, to sort of look at how we can, collectively work and commit to climate action. It's at the early stages, and it's sort of piggybacking off a similar charter that was launched in the UK whilst they were hosting COP. But I think it's something that we're very passionate about exploring, about how we can actually engage with that diversity. So that was all I had to say. So thank you very much, and thank you, Mick, for having me.